October 2018, 18-year-old Quantrell Schwartzlow escapes custody by jumping out of a second-story window. He didn't know he was on camera, and that put him into more trouble than he could ever imagine. Here are inmates who forgot there were cameras in prison. June 24th, an X-rated video emerged from HMP Wandsworth Prison in southwest London. Now, the video exposes the dark reality behind prison walls, where drug abuse has been a long-standing issue. A BBC investigation had previously shed light on this widespread drug problem, with inmates and some staff openly using hard drugs. The video, filmed in a prison cell, showed a female correctional officer engaging in this intimate act with an inmate. The officer's wedding ring was even visible, and her face and badge were later identified. The video would show an inmate holding the camera periodically, turning it to himself as he smoked a cigarette, making comments like this.
That's how we live at Wandsworth, man. Yeah?
Wandsworth Prison has 8 wings divided into 2 units. The smaller unit with 3 wings was initially for women but now houses male prisoners who participate in full-time activities. The shocking video was filmed in one of these units. As the camera panned across the cell, it showed a cluttered space with various items scattered around. The inmates were dressed in casual clothing, and the officer's uniform was later seen being adjusted as she exited the cell. The video's content was graphic and shocking, sparking widespread outrage and calls for accountability. And as of the time of this video, the Wandsworth prison officials have yet to comment on the matter, but an investigation is likely to follow. The officer, who was later revealed to not only be married but also have a son with her husband, also faces potential criminal charges and dismissal from her duties. This has raised questions about the facility's ability to address its drug problem and ensure proper conduct among staff members. Now, this next unexpected event happened at HMP Adderwell Prison, a private facility in West Lothian, Scotland. The video, recorded in August 2021, shows inmate Kevin Hogg, who was serving a 3-year sentence for traffic offenses. Despite the prison's security measures, Hogg manages to smuggle a mobile phone into his cell. He was probably able to do that thanks to his long history of run-ins with the law, and it was on this phone that he recorded a 65-second video that would soon go viral. In this clip, we see Hogg set up the phone on a shelf facing the cell door. He appears to freshen up, taking a drink of water, and then waits. Moments later, correctional officer Rachel Wilson enters the cell. Wilson, who was still in her probationary period, had only been on the job for a short time. At first, it all looks kinda normal, but what happens next is extraordinary. Hogg and Wilson exchange whispers, and then Hogg pulls her into a passionate kiss. Not long after, the video spreads rapidly among inmates and staff. Initial reactions ranged from shock and disbelief to outrage. And since Wilson was clearly visible in this video, she found herself at the center of this controversy. While the video itself offered no clear answers, investigations were launched to determine what really happened. As part of this investigation, rumors started speculating, saying that if Wilson had felt threatened or uncomfortable, she would have activated her panic button. But since she didn't, it kinda shows that she was a willing participant in this encounter. The observation is further supported by expert analysis, suggesting that the video was recorded to boost Kevin Hogg's reputation amongst fellow inmates, rather than for blackmail purposes. I mean, he took that video and showed everybody. It appeared that Hogg wanted to showcase his influence over a correction officer to gain status amongst his peers. Consequently, the prison authorities took swift and decisive action. The matter was promptly referred to the police, and Wilson's employment was terminated. There is no report on what happened to Kevin Hogg after that video went viral. Neither is there credible information about whether Wilson and Hogg were in a relationship or if it was just a one-time kiss. Over in Dagistan, Russia, a surprising escape attempt was caught on camera at one of its jails. This footage is the only proof of the astonishing moment a prisoner escaped his cell by squeezing through the tiny food hatch in his cell door. I mean, no one would have believed it if there was no evidence. CCTV shows the inmate, identified as Rustam Shakrutinov, forcing himself through the small hole without any clothes on. This all went down in Izberbash, in the Republic of Dagestan. In fact, due to the extreme flexibility this daring escape required, the 25-year-old, who has had an extensive criminal record, has been nicknamed the Snake Man by local media in southwest Russia. Rustam's casual attitude as he escaped is surprising, considering the daring nature of what he's doing. He didn't even try to run, just in case a security guard was watching the camera at that very moment, and maybe was coming to stop him. That smooth and successful prison break left authorities embarrassed and puzzled, prompting a thorough investigation. The first step was to hold the warden on duty accountable, as the escape was visible on camera. So, for the escape to have been possible, it meant that no one was watching those cameras, raising the question about the effectiveness of the surveillance team. Meanwhile, law enforcement swiftly sprang into action and added Rustam to the wanted list. A joint effort between police and military also initiated. However, it's not known if the police have actually caught him again. Nevertheless, people on social media are talking about the escape, comparing it to a scene from The X-Files and a comedy scene from Ace Ventura. Shakrudinov's flexibility and calmness now have earned him a reputation for being a master of escape. Up next, we have a routine shakedown at the Fulton County Jail, Atlanta, USA, uncovering some unexpected items, like a cell phone. While it's not unusual to find contraband during prison searches, in this one particular search, authorities started investigating and examining the recovered items when they finally got around to checking a phone, in which they discovered an explicit video. The video showing 36-year-old correctional officer Kawana Jenkins engaging in an intimate act with a male inmate was disturbing. Jenkins was dressed in full uniform, apparently sitting in the office she was assigned to. While the footage has no audio, it's clear that she was trying to say something to the person behind the camera recording her. In a split second, the man behind that camera pushed Jenkins away, and his finger appeared near her mouth. And without hesitation, Jenkins began sucking on it before the video abruptly ended. Now the prison wanted to know what was going on, and authorities soon discovered that the man in the video with Jenkins was an inmate at the Fulton County Jail. Although his face wasn't visible, investigators identified him using the tattoos on his hands. The Fulton County Sheriff's Office acted swiftly, firing and arresting Jenkins. Sheriff Pat Labonte expressed outrage and disappointment, emphasizing the importance of transparency and accountability amongst employees. Talking about that same accountability, this next viral video is from a prison in South Africa called Nkome Correctional Facility, and it shows a man and a woman getting pretty cozy in a room. The woman looks like the guard and the man looks like the prisoner. And even though they're on camera and it's really risky to do this, they don't care and start getting intimate right there in the room. They keep going at it for several minutes, who knows, maybe they like the camera watching them. The video started making rounds, and it led to some serious consequences. First off, the woman in this video lost her job, and the inmate was transferred to a max security prison and had some of his privileges taken away. After further investigations, it was revealed that the office where it all went down didn't even belong to the woman in the video. It belonged to another female officer, who was presumably the woman's friend. Unfortunately, this other female officer was also fired. So when the news broke out on social media, people started speculating that the two individuals in the video were married, and that prison officials had made a huge mistake by assigning him to the same prison as his wife. Social media detectives would even dig through the woman's Facebook account and find evidence that suggested the official and the inmate were a couple, and the whole thing wasn't even a real crime. However, the spokesperson for the Department of Correctional Services, Singo Andalo, debunked that rumor, stating that the two individuals in the video were not married. There's also rumors that the woman had taken her own life after deleting her Facebook account, unable to bear the embarrassment of the video being shared everywhere. But thankfully, that wasn't true either. Human rights groups also weighed in on this situation, claiming that this kind of thing happens all the time in prisons, but nothing ever changes. The chair for the Prisoners and Detainees Trust for Human Rights even pointed out that the video shows a clear security lapse within the correctional services. He did ask the public to stop sharing that video on social media, but he also questioned the logic behind assigning female workers to male prisoners. Aside from this, the whole thing got the South African government reminding everyone that romance between prison officials and inmates is strictly forbidden. June 15, 2018, a daring escape takes place at the Curry County Detention Center. The mastermind behind the escape wasn't one of the inmates, but rather Serena Dodson, a detention center employee, who was charmed into assisting 3 inmates in their escape. The inmates were identified as Aaron Clark, who was facing allegations of attempted child abuse and identity fraud, Ricky Senna, who'd been charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon and auto theft, and Victor Apodaca, who was being held on a drug-related charge. Now, according to news reports, the inmates had carefully planned their escape, using their charm to manipulate Serena into helping them. On the day of that escape, 28-year-old Serena was the only person in the control room, making it really easy to help them out.
For one of the men appears to take out a set of keys and unlock a secure door, making a break for it. A camera in the alley outside captured the men dressed in all white casually walking away.
She opens 3 security doors, allowing the men to walk to the outdoor recreation area freely.
Back inside the jail, a camera in the control room spots jail guard Serena Dodson alone.
However, Serena's mistake was forgetting that the control room was also under surveillance. The video shows her nervously scratching her head as she opens the door for the inmates. Her actions definitely didn't go unnoticed, and she was captured 4 days later. The inmates were also caught about a week after their escape, following a 3-hour standoff with the police. During Serena's trial, the judge highlighted that the escape wasn't a spontaneous act, but rather the result of careful planning over days and weeks. She then accepted a plea agreement of 3 counts of third-degree felony assisting escape and 1 fourth-degree felony count of bringing contraband to jail. Serena was initially sentenced to 10.5 years, which was later reduced to 9 years and 18 months of supervised probation. In contrast, the inmates weren't as fortunate. Ricky Senna received a 30-year sentence for felony escape from jail and other crimes to be served concurrently with his 11-year sentence. Victor Apodaca was sentenced to 12 years for felony escape from jail, with 6 years suspended to be served on probation. Aaron Clark received a 10-year sentence for the same charge, with 4 years suspended, also to be served on probation. October 2018, Quantrell Schwartzlow was arrested in Ofordville, Wisconsin on suspicion of second-degree sexual assault, strangulation, and battery. Initially, he refused to be interviewed, but later changed his mind while being led to his cell. However, during a brief moment of being left alone in a locked interview room, Schwartzlow made a daring escape. He climbed out of the second-floor window despite being handcuffed. And this whole thing is captured on CCTV from the sheriff's office, which showed Schwartzlow open the window and dive headfirst off the second story. After falling 16 feet to the ground, another camera captures the 18-year-old running through the fields at the Rock County Sheriff's Office. When a cop came to the room to check on Schwartzlow, he got the biggest shock of his life as he exclaimed,
"Oh, no f***ing way."
It took the cops around 14 minutes to even realize he'd escaped from the room, and they would spend another 4 hours looking for Schwartzlow until he was finally found hiding in a friend's house. During his sentencing, Deputy District Attorney Perry Foltz revealed the disturbing details of Schwartzlow's crimes. This kid strangled a young woman until she lost consciousness and then sexually assaulted her, claiming he was trying to make her feel better. The victim further explained that her relationship with Schwartzlow had been marked by persistent abuse and threats. Defense attorney Michael Murphy also revealed that Schwartzlow had been adopted, but later got into contact with his biological father, who was a big drug dealer. He would also argue that Schwartzlow suffers from fetal alcohol syndrome and was negatively influenced by the money, power, and effect his biological father had on women. In the end, Schwartzlow was charged with felony escape and sentenced to 4 years in prison, and 4 years of extended supervision for the strangulation and prison escape. And the county sheriff's office has now installed metal grates on the windows because we just can't have this happen again. Now, this next entry shows the daring move made by 21-year-old Callum Finter from Bradford, UK, when he attempted to aid his teenage friend's escape from court. Finter's friend, whose name was not publicized for legal reasons, had been arrested for stealing a mobile phone and was in court to hear his sentence of 21 weeks. However, instead of offering moral support, Finter was only present in court to execute his plan to free his friend from custody. And as his friend is being led away by guards out of the Bradford Youth Court, Finter, wearing a Burberry cap, positioned himself next to the automatic door button, conveniently located outdoors and within his reach. When his friend breaks free from the guards holding him and makes a beeline for the door, Finter was ready. He pushes the button, allowing his friend to escape. The scene's caught on video showing at least 4 guards chasing after the teen, while Finter walks away casually, avoiding suspicion. Now, this escape looked pretty simple and kind of funny, but the incident raises questions about court security and how did Finter's actions go unnoticed? Well, for one, the fact that the door button was on the outside and accessible to everyone kinda makes it an obvious weakness for court security. However, their freedom was short-lived, as they were captured 2 days later. Now interestingly, when Finter was questioned about his motives, he claimed that he was expecting his friend would be released, as his lawyer had suggested that the teen wouldn't be jailed at the end of the hearing. He goes on to say that he released his younger friend so they could spend the day playing snooker together. Who would lie about something like that? Either way, it's certain that Finter didn't think about the consequences of his actions. Unfortunately, their attempt to play snooker together led to harsher sentences and potential time behind bars. The teen was given an additional 6 months for his escape, adding 3 extra weeks to the initial sentence. Finter also didn't get off lightly either. He received 3 months for aiding that escape. Finter's lawyers would come out and say that it was all an accident, but the prosecution argued that the plan was organized, premeditated, and orchestrated by Finter. And that's because Finter was seen shouting something inaudible to his friend as he ran past him. Despite that, the judge deemed Finter's actions serious enough to warrant a sentence. The next inmate who forgot there were cameras in prison has to be Blaze Ayers, a 28-year-old inmate at Jackson County Jail. Now he too attempted a daring escape from the county jail, but his plan was poorly thought out and ended in embarrassing failure. February 4th, 2019, Ayers was being escorted alongside other prisoners through the jail back to their holding cells from an indoor recreation area, when he would suddenly break away from the group and make a beeline for the medical room. Next, he barricaded himself inside, but officers, though caught off guard, were quick to react. They found another way into the room and were surprised to find Ayers had already managed to climb into the ceiling. Now, despite being told to come down, he refused and continued to crawl through the ceiling towards the booking area, causing significant damage. He ripped through the ductwork, smashed lights, sending debris all over the ground. Eventually, he lost his footing and fell through the ceiling. Thankfully, 4 guards were there patiently waiting for him. At first, you just see his torso as he's trying to hang on before he falls to the ground. But even after he falls, he still refuses to cooperate. He struggles and resists as the officers try to subdue him, forcing him to use a stun gun to bring him under control. After the incident, he was checked out by prison medical and treated for minor injuries. Ayers was also in trouble for missing a court date on a battery charge on Christmas Eve in 2018, and now he's facing even more serious charges for felony attempted escape, misdemeanor criminal mischief, and causing damage to the jail. And as a result, he'll likely be spending more time behind bars. Up next in this disturbing incident involving a former corrections officer, we have David M. Schwartz and an inmate, Terry Whitehead, captured on body cam footage. The video shows a shocking and cruel encounter between Schwartz, another officer, Devin Edwards, and Whitehead at the Louisville Metro Department of Corrections. On April 18, 2018, during a routine cell check, Schwartz and Edwards instructed Whitehead to remove toilet paper covering his cell. When Whitehead refused, the officers forcibly cuffed and removed him to a holding area. What unfolded next was a disturbing display of excessive force. While still in handcuffs, Whitehead was pepper sprayed, choked, and beaten. It was obvious that they intended to carry out this assault without getting caught. But unfortunately for them, they got sloppy, and part of the incident was recorded by Edwards when he accidentally turned on his body cam. The footage shows Whitehead begging for mercy, promising to cooperate in the future. Despite that, though, the officers continued to strike him, even though he posed no threat. Whitehead feared for his life during the ordeal, and his mother was devastated upon learning of this incident. Following the incident now, Schwartz attempted to cover up his actions by following a false and misleading report. In the report, he deliberately left out the fact that he had used force against Whitehead, and instead charged the inmate with felony third-degree assault, including false information about Whitehead's conduct, a sick, blatant attempt to shift the blame and justify his own actions. However, their supervisor, Sergeant Donna K. Gentry, had found out about this assault and the body camera footage. But she decided to help Schwartz and Edward escape punishment and instead also filed a false report of her own, including false statements and omitting crucial details about the excessive force used by Schwartz and Edwards. She then told Edwards to review her report and submit a similar account, with slight wording changes to avoid detection. After the incident came to light thanks to the body cam footage, Schwartz was sentenced to 2 years in prison, while Gentry received 8 months of house arrest.
cutting a hole in your pants to make it easier to have sex with an inmate, and having intercourse in full view of 11 other inmates is something only a depraved mind can come up with.
The next inmate who forgot there were cameras around was incarcerated at Fresno County Jail in California. However, a corrections officer named Tina Gonzalez was caught in the middle of this shocking scandal that would ultimately lead to a string of legal issues for her. In fact, her actions were pretty disturbing, sparking an investigation by the sheriff's office, which uncovered this web of deceit and misconduct. At the center of this scandal was Gonzalez's decision to engage in this romantic encounter with one of the inmates of the facility. But that wasn't all. Gonzalez chose to do this in full view of not one, not two, but 11 inmates. Then, as if all this weren't enough, she took an extraordinary step to cut a hole in her trousers to facilitate these encounters. Ooh, that shocking behavior was a clear violation of her duties as a corrections officer, and just put the whole facility at risk. The investigation, led by Fresno County Assistant Sheriff Steve McComas, revealed that Gonzalez's actions went far beyond mere having a relationship with her inmate. Oh, she was smuggling all kinds of contraband, like razors, drugs, and even phones. Furthermore, Gonzalez compromised routine searches by tipping off the prisoners, giving them enough opportunity to hide their contraband. Investigations would also show that Gonzalez's relationship with the inmate had been going on for about a year. Detectives searched the inmate's cell and found the phone, which provided irrefutable evidence of her wrongdoing. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Gonzalez was arrested in December 2019. But even after being caught and arrested, Gonzalez would continue her illicit behavior, engaging in sexually explicit phone conversations with the said inmates. Phone records are showing that she even boasted about the crime she carried out. At her trial, Gonzalez showed no remorse for anything. However, her defense would say that she was vulnerable after her divorce. He claimed that she saw the inmate as a means of emotional release and took responsibility for her actions by cooperating with the investigation. Despite the severity of her actions, Judge Michael Idiart acknowledges Gonzalez's lack of prior offenses and expressed belief in her potential for redemption.
I think what you did was terrible, stupid. You ruined your career. You endangered your fellow officers. But I also believe that people can redeem themselves. You got the rest of your life to prove that.
He then gives her 7 months in prison and 2 years of probation, a pretty lenient sentence compared to the max punishment of 3 years and 8 months in prison. And after she got out, Gonzalez just had to leverage her notoriety and become a social media influencer. Now, this prison escape caught on camera involves none other than the famous Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman Loera, also known as El Chapo. Now, this guy used to be one of the most powerful drug traffickers in the world, a real notorious figure with the incredible ability to evade authorities. And we all know he escaped from prison not once, but twice. January 19, 2001, El Chapo's first prison escape. Some say he was able to bribe the guards to facilitate a getaway. And it worked. A prison guard named Francisco El Chito Camberos Rivera opened the electronic door for El Chapo's cell and just let him out. Some say he hid away in a laundry cart, which was pushed by another worker, Javier Camberos, through several doors and out of the prison. Once outside, El Chapo got into the trunk of a car driven by Camberos and was taken out of town. At the gas station, Camberos went inside for a moment, and when he came back, El Chapo was gone. He'd escaped on foot into the night. However, that freedom was short-lived as he was recaptured in 2014. El Chapo wouldn't give up though. He planned an even more daring escape, one that would showcase his mastery of evasion. And this time, El Chapo's associates dug this elaborate tunnel that led straight to his jail cell. The plan was meticulously thought out, really exploiting one of the few blind spots of his cell.
This is the moment Joaquin El Chapo Guzman makes the Mexican government look ridiculous. Pacing up and down in his cell, calmly.
July 11th, 2015, we see El Chapo wandering around his cell at the Federal Social Readaptation Center No. 1 before heading over to the shower area, where the hidden entrance to the tunnel was located. In the video footage captured on camera, it was obvious that the plan was so well thought out that El Chapo even increased the volume of his TV to mask the noise he made during his escape. El Chapo was seen on camera at around 9 p.m. When the guards didn't see him for about 25 minutes, some of them would go looking for him. However, when they got there, he was gone. and what they found in his cell was astonishing. It was discovered that the drug lord had escaped through the tunnel leading from the shower area to some kilometers away in a Santa Juanita neighborhood. The tunnel was a marvel of engineering, with a mechanical system to move tools within the tunnel. It was well illuminated and ventilated with artificial light, air ducts, and high-quality construction materials. El Chapo would use a ladder to climb down 33 feet, and then he'd find a motorcycle down there, which authorities thought was used to transport materials and possibly El Chapo himself. El Chapo walked free until January 2016 when he was recaptured in a shootout in Mexico. He was then extradited to the U.S., where he faced numerous charges, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and involvement in organized crime. 2 years later, Chapo was found guilty on multiple charges in a New York court and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. We all know he's currently serving at ADX Florence, a high-security federal prison in Colorado. In this shocking video, an American convicted murderer known as Richard Lee McNair showcased his mastery of deception. Unknown to the friendly police officer he interacted with, McNair had a history of evading capture, having attempted 2 previous escapes from 2 different prison facilities. On his first attempt, he would use balm to squeeze out of a pair of handcuffs, and the second time he escaped through a ventilation duct. Now, during his time at prison at the penitentiary in Pollock, Louisiana, McNair would work in the manufacturing area for several months repairing old, torn mailbags. It was here that he cleverly planned his 3rd escape attempt. This guy made an escape pod, complete with a breathing tube, and concealed it beneath a pile of mailbags. The pod was then shrink-wrapped and transported to a nearby warehouse outside the prison, awaiting the perfect moment for his escape. Now you see, McNair was incarcerated at the time for murdering 1 man and shooting a second man 4 times during a botched robbery. So on April 5, 2006, McNair hid in a pallet of mailbags and was transported out of that prison. After the prison staff delivered the pallet and went for lunch, McNair cut himself out of his escape pod and walked through the unsecured area to freedom. Now, his little escape pod was moved from the warehouse at around 9:45 a.m. He had to wait until 11 a.m. to cut himself out. Despite the time that had passed, McNair was aware that his absence wouldn't be noticed until 4 p.m., giving him enough opportunity to establish a head start. His plan was simple. He wanted to go to the nearby town of Alexandria, Louisiana, where he would then steal supplies and transportation. Fun fact, McNair at the time was the first prisoner to escape from a federal prison since 1991. However, just hours after his escape, McNair was stopped by police officer Carl Bordelin while running along a railroad track near Ball, Louisiana. The entire thing was captured on the camera mounted on Bordelin's patrol car.
You live around here, buddy? No. Where you live at?
Down the road by Pineville.
Pineville?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Do you have any form of identification on you?
No, man.
What's your name?
Robert Jones.
Interestingly, barely 5 minutes later, McNair provided a different name when asked again.
So what's your name again?
Jimmy Jones.
Bordelin didn't notice the name change, and McNair started joking with the officer, claiming he was in town to help on this roofing project and was out for a jog. Even when the police sent a description matching him, he maintained his cool. The picture sent to Bordelin was of low quality and outdated, making it really hard to confirm McNair's identity. Bordelin later mentioned that McNair's physical appearance didn't quite match the description he had received. Also, what made it easier for McNair to escape was that the prison had told the police that they were not completely sure that McNair had escaped. So, seeing no reason to be suspicious, Bordelin let McNair go. McNair walked free for over a year, crossing repeatedly from the US to Canada, until October 24, 2007, when he was arrested for stealing a vehicle in Canada. He's currently serving 2 terms of life imprisonment for his murder crimes, including escaping from a prison at the US Penitentiary, McCreary in Kentucky.